아래 당도 가서 당도 동아세다 디유주에게 탑람데라.
Good morning. So yesterday we spoke about the method by which one can achieve lasting, stable happiness, a happiness completely freed from all problems, suffering, and difficulties. And this method is about transforming one's mind, not at all trying to transform our outer conditions, but focusing on changing our very way of thinking. And this comes down to strengthening our habituation to wholesome or virtuous ways of thinking, and breaking our habituation to unwholesome or non-virtuous ways of thinking. So to be able to transform our way of thinking, we need knowledge in terms of how to do so, and we need guidance in terms of being able to actually do so ourselves. To receive knowledge and guidance, we need a spiritual teacher. And this was what we looked at in the first verse yesterday. Look, we need to rely on a spiritual teacher who possesses abundant, excellent qualities. And by receiving their guidance, and due to having a deep trust in their good qualities and recognizing their great kindness, we, from our side, need to strive to train our minds in the way we are guided. Thereafter, in the second verse, we answered a question: do I have the capacity to actually be able to transform my mind? Because all too often we have a particularly mistaken way of appreciating just what we've achieved. We see ourselves as being quite weak, as being powerless, as being life controlling us. But what we looked at in the second verse yesterday is that having attained a rebirth with the 18 freedoms and endowments, particularly the 8 freedoms and the 10 endowments, having achieved such a rebirth, we are able to do some incredible things in terms of transforming our mind. Because the particular quality that comes with a human rebirth is this remarkable human intelligence. And because this is not just an ordinary human rebirth, but a precious human rebirth, we have met the Dharma, we have faith in the Dharma, and we have an interest, a yearning to cultivate the qualities within. All of this can be done. And this is what makes this life, in terms of its potential, greatly meaningful. Because having a precious human rebirth, we can accumulate the causes, firstly, that will lead to further excellent rebirths, and thereby ensure that we can continue from life to life on our process of spiritual development. But not only that, we can accumulate the causes that can eventually lead to our complete liberation from the sufferings of samsara, attaining the state of lasting happiness for ourselves. And not only that, in dependence on this rebirth, we can even create the causes that will eventually lead to our attainment of Buddhahood, where not only are we liberated from suffering, but we have the most excellent skill and ability to guide others to achieve such a state. So in the second verse yesterday, we looked at just what a remarkable rebirth this is and why it is such a potentially meaningful rebirth. And the purpose of looking at this was so that we don't see this life, this opportunity, as ordinary or commonplace, and we no longer take it for granted, but rather embrace its full potential. So knowing then how precious this life is, just what incredible potential it holds, we were also guided yesterday to recognize that a life such as this is difficult to gain. It can be said to have been found only once. And the reason it is so difficult to gain is because of how difficult it is to accumulate all the required causes for a fully fledged precious human rebirth. So those causes are firstly ethical restraint. That is the cause that leads to an excellent rebirth as in the high realms as a human or as a god, where one restrains one's physical behavior and speech within the confines of what is ethical and strives to restrain one's mind within the confines of what is ethical. But furthermore, to have an act, not just a human rebirth, but a precious human rebirth, one needs additional causes. those of generosity, so as to have material abundance, those of patience, so that one's sense faculties are complete, and that one easily develops harmonious relationships with others. Fourthly, that of enthusiastic perseverance, where one delights in virtue, where one has a disposition towards being virtuous and seeks out virtuous paths. And that then also requires prayer to meet the Dharma, meet our teachers, and so forth. So these 5 causes need to be accumulated well in order to have a rebirth like we have. So having this life, we can recognize in lives previous to this, we created the causes whose rich result we are now experiencing. So from that, we can take confidence that we can do this again. But we need to strive to accumulate similar causes again. So with effort, we need to do so all day and all night, developing similar causes again. And this is how we take the very essence of this life. So therefore, it is important to no longer take this life for granted or to see it as commonplace, but to recognize just how rare and precious it is, and thereby, with that resulting motivation, strive to accumulate the required causes. So those are the 2 trainings that we looked at yesterday. Trainings in the sense of we need to train our mind in them. But I just want to add one additional and very important point in relation to relying on the spiritual teacher, because a potential danger may come if one doesn't understand this particular point, which is that it's imperative one develops a deep faith or trust in one's teacher, because that makes one open and receptive to his or her guidance. So this is imperative. And being open and receptive to one's teacher's guidance, one will seek out teachings, and in those teachings, one will be given guidance. And with deep faith and trust in one's teacher, one will strive to develop that guidance within oneself. This is excellent. This is how one spiritually develops. However, it is the responsibility of the student to become educated in the Dharma and thereby to be sure that the guidance being received is in accordance with the teachings of the Buddha. Whilst one is encouraged to do everything that the teacher guides one to do, and to do so in the way guided, this assumes one has checked out this teacher to ensure that they are fully qualified. If they give you any guidance which in accordance to your knowledge of the Buddha Dharma is not correct, then it is your responsibility to politely decline. This is important. So whilst it is correctly said that one should seek out and follow the guidance received, should that guidance ever not be in accordance with the teachings of the Buddha, politely decline. This is important. So to continue from where we came to yesterday, which was guiding you to recognize the great potential that this life holds. And that great potential is the profound impact that if one lives this life in a meaningful way, this life can have a profound impact on the trajectory of your future rebirths. Recognizing this, then one will want to, the wish will arise within one to strive in ethics, generosity, patience, enthusiastic perseverance, and prayer. But there is one further obstacle that one needs to be aware of and strive not to be deceived by this obstacle. And that is this feeling that I have time. And this feeling that I have time is something that we are all subject to. One may say, well, I'm still quite young. I look at the average lifespan in this country or in my family. I know I have years and decades ahead of me. Or if one feels not so young, one can still have this feeling of there is time. I do not need to do anything right now. This lack of urgency comes from a misconception about the certainty of having time. This then leads us to wasting this potential and will lead to regret in the end. So this mistaken way of thinking is a major impediment to taking the very essence of this life. So now we come to the third verse, which addresses this. This body and life are unstable like a water bubble. Remain mindful of how quickly it declines and death comes. After death, like a shadow follows the body, virtuous and non-virtuous karma follows. So looking at the first line, this body and life are unstable like a water bubble. So here, this verse is to encourage us to embrace enthusiastically the fulfillment of the potential of this life. So to do so, we need to recognize that both this body, so the body in terms of our physical health and strength and vitality, as well as our life, in other words, being alive, both of these are very unstable. They are likened to a water bubble. So a water bubble, we know, lasts only a moment. And across the expanse of lifetimes that we have had and will continue to have, a single lifetime, even of the duration of a human rebirth, is likened to a water bubble. But in particular here, it is fragility and its instability. We have a feeling that there's time, but the reality is our life, and certainly our health and vitality, this can end at any moment, and it is not at all stable. In particular, we can observe the change that our body, and therefore our strength and our vitality, has already undergone in this life. There's nothing stable here at all, but impermanence, when we look clearly, is abundantly clear. So with this reflection, what we need to challenge within ourselves is this misconception about stability. We feel as if we have an immensity of time, and we also feel that we do not change. So when you think of yourself sitting here today, and you think of yourself a few years ago, a few decades ago, there's still the sense of, that was me. The truth is, that person completely changed. So if we think about it certainly on the physical level, it's very easy to see how the body changes over specific periods of one's life. When one was very little, when one was a young person, when one's middle age, and so forth. One can recognize quite clearly then that there's change. But actually this process of change is continuous. The body is continuously changing. There's all underneath this cover of the skin and this veneer of stability, there's constant movement within. And on a cellular level, our body is changing constantly. But we relate to ourselves with a sense of stability, which is completely mistaken. It does not have a basis in reality at all. And where we are right now is that when we look back at any point in our life, we are older than we were. This means our body is changing. It's not just the calendar that changes. This body is changing. And likewise, where we are right now, we are younger than we will be tomorrow, next week, next month. And again, it is not the calendar that changes. This body is what is changing. This means our body is in every moment moving further from the point when it was new and fresh and closer to the point when it will no longer have the strength to sustain life. And when that moment comes, that the body no longer has the strength to sustain life, isn't necessarily in old age. It can happen at any time. And this is a further delusion we live with, that we will all live to a good old age. And whilst when we look at averages, obviously, there is an average, but there is no certainty for any one individual that that average will be achieved or not. This is the reality of it. And what I'm saying here, I don't think is anything that's intellectually challenging. Everyone will get it immediately. But what you need to recognize is that intellectual understanding and how we naturally relate to this life, they are totally discordant. We live as if we have time. We live as if this current state of my strength, physical, mental strength, this will remain, when it certainly will not. There's this constant process of change that our body is going through. So our death is certain. But not only is it certain that we will die, But along this journey of life, every period that we can divide our life into, our week into, our day into, that ends too. This session together will end, as yesterday's did, as will this retreat. Everything comes to an end. The opportunity to utilize each moment will end. This then we need to recognize. And what brings things to an end there are a multitude of causes that can bring things to an end. So if we return then to this life that we relate to with a mistaken view of stability, the truth is, something could be going very wrong within your body right now, and we do not yet recognize that a severe illness is about to befall us. Moreover, we may eat something and it just does not agree with us. It may even lead to the end of our life, but it may lead to severe illness and an incapacity for a while. Maybe enjoying time with our friends, but we're walking, we slip, we fall. Perhaps we hit our head, or maybe we break a bone, and this has a great impact on our life. Accidents can befall us so easily. Illness can befall us so easily. And this just is the reality of our situation. Every opportunity we have ends. This life and the opportunity it brings will end. And when that end comes is entirely unknown. And the reasons that can lead to its end are multiple. Therefore, we need to recognize the great fragility of this opportunity that we have. Second line, remain mindful of how quickly it declines and death comes. So this really points to what we need to challenge within ourselves, the sense of stability, which is not based in any reality. Hence, it's very easy intellectually to disprove that this life is stable. So that we will die is widely accepted. There's no discussion about that. And that death will come is okay. Whatever is born will cease. That is completely normal. But the delusion we need to overcome is that the sense that I have time. So when we ask ourselves, can I say with certainty when death will come? And none of us can say when that will come. We can all accept death will come, but we cannot say when it will come. There's no one that can say whether they will die tomorrow or not. There's no one that can even say whether they will die today or not. We have our hopes, but that really is all that we have. There is nothing that is reliable in terms of when our death will come, because of the wide number of causes that can have an impact as to our death. So right now, across our world, we look at humans, animals, so many are dying, are in the actual final moments of their life. And this could just be due to the natural ending of their life. It could be due to illness that has now brought a life to an end. Could be due to an accident, a natural calamity, whatever it may be. But none of these beings came into this year saying, this will be the last year of my life. When Easter comes, my life will end. No one knows this. But yet that their ending has now come. So no, we do not have time, a definite time to prepare. We cannot say, these are my final months. But we do need to recognize this instability, because this will spur us into action, spur us into living a meaningful life. So again, the ending of our life, natural process. It's not a problem. But we need to utilize this remaining time very skillfully, very well. In the Tibetan, or the second line, it ends with what we have at the beginning. Remain mindful of this. So we need to remain mindful of our inevitable death and its great uncertainty as to when that will be. And why we need to remain mindful of this is because it serves to spur us on to utilize skillfully what remains of this life. So for you here, you have a wish to transform your minds, to live a meaningful life. So this is a very useful reflection. For those out in society, it's a very strange way to think. So to encourage them to think in this way, that maybe doesn't make so much sense. But for ourselves, we need to remain mindful that this life is ending, and we need to therefore utilize well what remains of this precious opportunity. Taking to heart then the uncertainty of our time of death, and therefore the importance of utilizing what remains of this life well, the question will then follow, what happens after death? So, for those who believe that with the ending of this life, they become non-existent, then they don't need to worry about making causes for future lives, because according to the philosophy that guides them, when death comes, they are extinguished. But this is not how it is in reality. After death, rebirth follows. So this then is the start of the third line, after death. After death, rebirth follows. And just like has been mentioned, in the same way that death comes about in dependence on a wide variety of causes, hence it's impossible to predict when one's death will come, our birth, each and every birth, also comes about in dependence on causes. And in terms of the types of rebirth that any being can expect, well, there are only two directions one can go in. In the case of us humans, we can either remain in the high realms, so gain rebirth as a human again, or as a god, or we may fall into the lower realms, rebirth as an animal or spirit, or in the hell realms. Those are the only two directions one can take, and one will be born in one of those 6 realms. So, whilst our death is certain, but the time and manner of our death is unknown, there will be a resulting rebirth in either the higher or lower realms. This is certain. And what it is that determines whether we are born again in an excellent rebirth or in the lower realms is the karma that has been created. So the third line continues, after death, like a shadow follows the body. And the fourth line, virtuous and non-virtuous karma follows. So it's this virtuous and non-virtuous karma that determines whether one attains a rebirth in the higher realms or the lower realms. So the Tibetan is literally white and black karma, and the meaning is virtuous and non-virtuous karma. And should it be a virtuous karmic imprint that is most powerful on our continuum, and that is what will ripen at death and lead to rebirth once again in the higher realms. But should it be a non-virtuous karmic imprint that is most powerful on our continuum, that will ripen at death and lead to rebirth in the lower realms. Moreover, the variety of the numerous karmic imprints accumulated in this life, they do not remain in this life. They follow us into our next life, influencing the experiences of that life. So in this way, our virtuous and non-virtuous karma follows us like a shadow follows the body from lifetime to lifetime. So in the same way that our death is certain, so too is it definite that we will take rebirth, and where that rebirth will be is determined by our karma. The process of the reflection, that is the meditation that's pointed to in this third verse, is that one first reflects on the certainty of one's death, and one recognizes death will come. I've seen this process of change that I'm undergoing, and there is no stability. So therefore what arises will cease. But when it will cease, this is completely unknown. And I can recognize this in society. People die at a variety of times due to a variety of reasons. Therefore, I recognize there are so many causes that can lead to the ending of my life that the time of my death is uncertain. But at death, I do not become non-existent. Rebirth will immediately follows in one of two places. I will either remain in the high realms or fall to the low realms. And what determines which rebirth I take, it's not a choice I have at the end of my life. The karma I've created that is what determines where I'll be reborn. If my virtuous karma is strong and dominant, once again, I'll take rebirth in the higher realms. But if my non-virtuous karma is dominant, I will fall to the lower realms. This is the process of how rebirth comes about. And the lower realms are defined by their intense suffering. The higher realms are defined by their far, far greater happiness. So we all want to be happy. No one wants to suffer. So therefore, it's an easy choice. I want a better rebirth. I do not want to fall into the lower realms. And then one comes to the purpose of this meditation. I need to strive in accumulating virtue and purifying non-virtue. This is the result of this meditation. In particular, this determination, I have to accumulate virtue, I have to purify non-virtue. This needs to come conjoined with an urgency. It's not good enough if it's a mere intellectual understanding or something, yes, this will be good to do. We know from our life there are many things that we recognize are good to do, but they remain undone. This is too important. We have to transform our mind through the accumulation of virtue whilst this opportunity remains. Because the recognition that this meditation leads to is not only that I need to accumulate virtue, I need to do so from right now, and I need to do so in a sustained way, because it is certain that this opportunity is drawing to an end. The opportunity that this life presents is drawing to an end. I do not know how much time I have, so I need to apply myself, and I need to apply myself from right now. What does it mean to accumulate virtue? It means to accumulate our habituation to virtuous ways of thinking, so that these virtuous ways of thinking become ingrained within us, become an expression of who we are. And how do we go about this? Well, this was as presented in the second class yesterday. The accumulation of virtue in this context refers to the causes, accumulating the causes that lead to rebirth in the higher realms. Ethical restraint, generosity, patience, enthusiastic perseverance, and prayer. Those 5. So these are what we need to accumulate, and we need to do so from right now and in a sustained manner. So what we need to accumulate then are those 5 causes that lead to excellent rebirths. And what we need to refrain from are the opposite to those 5. In particular, unethical behavior, not restraining ourselves ethically, because those are the causes that lead to lower realm rebirth. So those are presented as 10. Not to kill, not to steal, not to engage in sexual misconduct, being 3 general ones to do with physical behavior. In terms of verbal behavior, not to lie, not to engage in harsh speech or divisive speech or pointless chatter. So these are 4 general ones in terms of speech to refrain from, because these create causes that only lead to suffering. And then in terms of the mind, it's covetousness, harmful intent, and wrong views. These 10 then are what we need to refrain from, because they only lead to suffering. So the result that one comes to from this meditation on the impermanence of our life is that a deep and abiding determination arises to develop a habituation to wholesome, virtuous ways of thinking, so that these wholesome ways of thinking become ingrained within one, become very much part of you, as well as then developing a deep repulsion to unethical behavior, so that, for example, even the very thought to take a life, one feels repulsed by it. The very thought of being aggressive, one feels repulsed by it. The very thought of wanting to lie, one's repulsed from this. Then this is how one experiences this deep transformation, being drawn to be of benefit, being repulsed or deeply restrained from causing harm. And moreover, this determination to cultivate this way of thinking needs to be sustained. One needs to continuously be ensuring one's mind is ethical, and continuously ensuring one's mind is not going beyond the confines of what is ethical. So this requires constant repetition in terms of meditation and keeping in the forefront of one's mind. This is how habits are formed. And this then is the result of this meditation. And in your own practice, I encourage you, when you meditate on this verse, to add the two lines from the previous verse, the last 2 lines, because it's not explicitly stated in the 3rd verse, but it would be implied that in meditation one should include the last 2 lines of the previous verse. Please inspire me so that a mind that takes its essence arises unceasingly all day and all night. Because these are the kinds of thoughts one wants to have predominating one. One wants to, every day, every night, be thinking, I will not harm, I will only bring benefit, and have these minds arising within oneself again and again, because this is how we take the very essence of this life, which is to strengthen our habituation to wholesome, virtuous ways of thinking and break our habituation to unethical ways of thinking. And to do that, one requires a sustained effort, because this is how one develops any habit. And what we are trying to develop habitual ways of thinking, which are virtuous and wholesome. And by doing so, day and night, then one is developing ever more causes. And how one experiences that is it becomes ever more ingrained within oneself, very much part of who you are. By striving from this point to whenever one's life does come to an end, what you can have confidence in is that when your life ends, or is ending, and you are lying on your deathbed and you're looking back, you will be able to leave this life without fear and without regret, because you know, I've lived a meaningful life. This last period of my life, I really have made some effort and I have experienced good results. Therefore, I'm confident about what will follow. Because when our death comes, it's very possible that one will be fearful, knowing that one made some bad choices in life. But if one has lived well in this final period, transforming one's way of thinking, when death comes, one won't have regret, and one won't have fear about what lies before one. And in fact, one will actually be leaving this life with a sense of lightness. It will be like when you are moving from an old dilapidated home into a brand new building. This is what it's like. Or when you are able to move from a country that's falling apart to a country that's flourishing. This is what it'll be like. You will embrace the leaving behind of an old body for a new life. And as mentioned yesterday morning, what does Buddhist practice mean? It means training the mind. It's not about doing physical things or saying particular words. It's about training your mind. And to train your mind, you don't have to be wealthy. Anyone, no matter whether they're wealthy or poor or anywhere in between, can train their mind. One doesn't need to be a homeowner or own a palatial home. One can be living with one's parents, homeless. One can train one's mind. You don't need power or influence or authority to train your mind. Anyone can do so. So therefore, whatever your particular life circumstance is, you can engage in this practice of training your mind. In Buddhism, there is no creator God. There is a founder teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, who reintroduced Buddhism into our world. He was the first teacher of this age. And there are the great community of practitioners. So they would be called the Sangha. And there are the qualities that they have generated on their mind by relying on the teachings, the Dharma-jul. This, as Buddhists, is whom we go to for refuge. But merely having even deep faith in the 3 jewels, that alone is not sufficient. One has to create virtuous causes on one's continuum to achieve the virtuous results one wants, or the wholesome results one wants. Because the Buddha taught very clearly that everything comes about interdependently. There is nothing that is not a dependent arising. Everything you hope for will come about in dependence on causes. But also all that you don't want, that too comes about in dependence on causes. Recognizing this, Then one strives to accumulate the causes for the results you do want, and to avoid accumulating the causes for results that you do not want. So therefore, one has to have knowledge of the teachings of the Buddha to know which are the causes to accumulate and which are the ones to avoid. This means merely calling oneself a Buddhist, maybe having physical signs of being a Buddhist, is insufficient. One has to understand the teachings of the Buddha. One needs to understand the teachings of a Buddha through relying on a teacher. But even understanding the teachings of the Buddha, that alone is insufficient. One has to integrate them within one's mind. This is how one creates stronger imprints. So to use this situation as an illustration, hearing teachings with an engaged mind is creating fairly strong imprints on one's mind. But if that's all one does, those imprints are not that powerful. They will not alone lead to transformation of your way of thinking. Those imprints have to be reinforced by continuously hearing teachings and reflecting on them. It's this process of the continuous gathering of knowledge, including on topics that one has heard many times, and the process of continuously reflecting on them. This is what leads to powerful imprints and a transformed mind. This is imperative. So if you want good results, you have to accumulate those causes. And if you don't want other results, avoid those causes. Kind-hearted people have come about independence on causes they've created. But so too, those who are malicious, those who take pleasure in causing suffering in others, their way of thinking has also come about independence on causes. So this is something unique to the teachings of the Buddha, that everything is interdependent. All that one wants comes about in dependence on causes. Identify those and strive to accomplish them. All that one doesn't want, it also comes about in dependence on causes. Receive your teachings, know what to avoid, and then avoid it. Train your mind in this way. The meaning then of what we looked at this morning is that this precious human rebirth is impermanent. The incredible opportunity that this life presents is rapidly drawing to an end. That is certain. But what is completely unknown to any of us is when that end will come. There is no certainty in terms of how much time lies before us. We don't know who amongst us will be the first to die. We cannot say it will be the oldest. There is no certainty. And we know this from what we observe in the world. But we need to take this to heart because of what it leads to. And it leads to a determination that therefore I must strive to strengthen my habituation to virtuous ways of thinking and break my habituation to non-virtuous ways of thinking and acting. And as the time of my death is completely unknown, I must do so from right now, and I must do so in a sustained manner. And by doing so, you will then, when death does come, you will die with a relaxed mind, even perhaps a joyous mind, confident in your next rebirth. And you'll be confident in your next rebirth because of your deep habituation that you've gained through meditating repeatedly over a sustained period on, firstly, ethical restraint. Ethical restraint, again, is the determination not to do harm, not to take life, not to steal and so forth, not to speak in a way that deceives others or takes advantages of others and so forth, and to even restrain one's way of thinking so one doesn't have malicious thoughts towards others or desirous thoughts towards possessions and so forth. This is ethical restraint, restraining oneself physically, verbally, mentally within the confines of what is ethical. But in brief, it's I will do no harm to others or myself. And then training in generosity, which in brief is the wish to give of oneself, to be of benefit. Ethics is the determination not to harm. Generosity is the wish to be of benefit, to help others, to be a source of good in their lives. Thirdly, then, training in patience, the determination for one's to take care of one's mind in times of adversity and ensure one's mind doesn't become disturbed. Fourthly, enthusiastic perseverance, taking joy, delight in one's virtuous endeavors, thereby developing a deep habituation and wanting, a yearning to be ethical, knowing then that in future lives one will seek out an ethical path. And this then is reinforced by the fifth course, that of prayer and dedication, where one dedicates one's virtue to continue to meet the Dharma, to continue to meet one's teachers, and continue to have a deep interest in the Dharma. So by having cultivated these 5 causes, when death comes, one can die in a relaxed mind, with a relaxed mind, welcoming a new body, a new life, an ongoing opportunity. And what's presented here in this 3rd verse ties very closely with what we looked at in the 2nd verse. Because it is this precious human rebirth with its 18 freedoms and endowments that is so rare that it can be said to have been found only once. And it's rare because the causes are so difficult to accumulate. And those causes are what we've looked at both yesterday and today. Ethics up to prayer, those 5 causes. So by engaging in this meditation, here on this retreat, hearing teachings and engaging in the meditation, and continuing to do so on a daily basis when you are not here, this is how you develop habituation, how your mind becomes ethical, generous, patient, and so forth. So thank you. Then we can conclude there for this morning. But if you have some questions, then do feel free to ask. Etsepo?
There was a question that came up yesterday in relation to being able to be inspired to take the essence of perfect human rebirth all day and all night. Can those, the things that we're advised to do, can that fit with a householder with a lot of responsibilities of elderly parents and other family? How can you, with not a lot of time for formal practice, can that combine with the busy responsibilities?
So this question points to a valid truth, which is that of our community here, some have more spare time than others. Those who have more spare time, recognize your fortune and don't waste that opportunity. Take it as a responsibility to the community, the direct community here, and more broadly, those of you with more time, use that time well, because what you have is greatly fortunate, and others will look at it and wish they had your spare time. Don't waste it. For those who do not have spare time, such as the original questioner, all that can be asked of you is do the best you can, because that actually is the meaning here of all day and all night. Do the best you can. For some, they have more time. They have that opportunity, and I encourage them to embrace it. Those who really are busy and have a lot of activities, this is an obstacle, and just ask, do the best you can. So how I suggest you approach it is try and take, even if it's literally 5 minutes, first thing in the morning, if you get up before others, and take that to quickly do the meditation in the way that's described. And each time I've mentioned it, it's been in a segment of 5 minutes or less. So if you just listen to that, or you learn it and say that again, but with your mind engaged, if that's all you have time to do, then that's excellent. Do that. Perhaps you can repeat it at the end of the day, just before you go to sleep. That's where you're starting. Excellent. And keep that up, and keep that up. As you start to feel the benefit of just those few minutes, you'll want to remind yourself of it during the day. And even with a busy day, there are moments when you can return to what you reflected on. Because there are times when you are doing things on autopilot. You don't need to be thinking about what you are doing because you've done it so many times. During such activities, you can then remind yourself of the meditation. When you're walking to the car, when you're going to the shops, then you can remind yourself of what you meditated on. And that way, it becomes a bit fresher during your day. And in particular, if you can, but again, when you're busy, it's difficult, to try and remind yourself of these points from the meditation before you engage in an activity, before you care for your parents, before you start your work for the day, and so forth. Then it will help be a bit more present in your day. But for those of you who are busy, To the extent you can do this, that's excellent. And I assure you, it will become easier as you become habituated to it. Because by taking pleasure in doing something habitually, you'll want to do it ever more. And therefore, thereby, the opportunities to do it ever more will come. And later in this life, when there is more time than there is right now, you'll be easily able to use that time well and not waste those opportunities should they come. Okay, then thank you very much. Thank you very much.